So what's going to happen is that when the natives settle down, they're going to farm and they're going to be more susceptible to disease. Now, the Sioux lead a nomadic lifestyle. They will settle down for periods of time, but they move too much in order for these diseases to catch up with them. In 1837, there's a massive smallpox epidemic among the native populations, and it wipes out almost over half of the populations on the plains. The Sioux are also going to have a higher birth rate than most native tribes, almost as high as Europeans. In 1804, there were about 5,000 born, and in 1850, there were like 25,000 born. So it goes up 5 times. In 1840, Texas, California, and Oregon had been acquired as new land between the Rockies and California, and it roughly came out to 1.5 million square miles, which is a lot. So John L. Sullivan comes up with this wonderful term they just thought of and wrote down on a cocktail napkin or something, manifest destiny. Now, his goal was to encourage people and get them all worked into a frenzy to go west. What was one of 2 good things about people moving west?
There's more land.
There's more land. What's it going to do with the crowded cities on the East Coast? It's going to siphon off some of the population. So it's a twofold goal here. Many Americans will believe that we have a mission to build the proverbial city on a hill. Isn't that discussed in the Bible at some point? The Quakers had this idea. Different people like that. Manifest destiny has a role as far as in the revolution, is that we should be in control of our own lives or whatever. It's just a natural progression to want to go across the Mississippi River and see what's out there, especially to California. Because eventually you're going to have San Francisco and some of the best shoe shopping in the world. So you might as well get set up while you can. By mid-19th century, the government wants to extend democracy to the West Coast. It wants to increase the number of voters. You get more landowners, you can have more voters, as long as you're not black or a woman. They want to eliminate any kind of king or aristocracy that still has a foothold in what is now the United States. Because as long as you have a king or an aristocracy around, what's the chances that there's a possibility they could come in and try to take us over again? Pretty darn good, I would say. They don't want a state-established church. This goes back to what now? I just talked about the separation of church and state. Why did the Pilgrims leave England?
For freedom of religion.
Right, because everybody was expected to belong to the
Church.
which church?
Anglican
Church, right. They believe that American social and economic system should be spread everywhere. Let's fast forward to the year 2010. Do we think that our American social and economic system should expand everywhere? Not a new concept. This is where it starts. Well, in the West, anyway. Manifest destiny has a self-interest component that goes with it as well. Business owners think, okay, if we can be on the West Coast, then we can trade with Asia and Americanize them. Yeah, good luck with that. Manifest destiny, that's supposed to encourage people to be free and to have property, promotes racism. Are you surprised by that? No. They believe that non-white people were backward and inferior. We've heard that before. They're not only talking about the savage Indian, but also the Mexicans as well. Keep in mind, the Mexicans had complex civilizations while the Europeans were still living in caves. So, don't even go there with that. They believe that manifest destiny could be completed without having any kind of conflict with anybody they just so happen to run into that's not supposed to be on our land. That's wishful thinking. Or insanity. Same thing. They compared neighboring lands to ripening fruit that would fall off the tree when ripe. I don't know about you, but after it's fallen off the tree, it's bruised, I don't want it. I want to get it while it's still ripe. So they are going to, under this concept, we're supposed to wait for the fruit to fall on its own, but as greedy Americans, we don't like this concept. We want it yesterday when it's still green, so we have to pick it before it's ripe, which means it's going to cause problems. In Texas, you're going to have some issues as well. In Mexico, there's a new government. Now, they want Americans to settle the area was Texas, which is now Texas. There are different reasons for this. Number one was to establish a trade system, and another was to hang on to that territory. Stephen Austin is going to establish a colony there, and he's one of the first land agents, or what's called an impresario. Yeah, I speak Spanish. So he's a land agent. So 90% of the settlers that go with Austin were from the South. 80% of those people were from Tennessee. So Tennessee and Texas are bonded in that way. Now, immediately you're going to have problems between the Mexicans and the immigrants. What's going to be the big problem? What religion do the Mexicans follow?
Catholic?
What are the new people coming in? Protestant. Yeah, that Protestant covers any of the Protestant religions. Now, they want to build churches, but the Mexicans, who are devoted to being Catholics, don't want them to build Protestant churches because they don't want to lose their followers. In 1829, the Mexican government will abolish slavery in Texas. Well, slavery still makes it there. They don't enforce it. Texas is considered part of the Mexican government, but they have little to say in the Mexican government. What does that sound a lot like? Why did we go to war with Britain?
Because of Texas?
No representation in government. But we had virtual representation because we had the internet and virtual reality and all that stuff. Being facetious there. So in 1830, after inviting the Americans to come to Texas to live, they tried to stop us from immigrating there. Isn't that a bit ironic? Have you ever seen that movie Day After Tomorrow? About the global warming, and then everybody's going south, and the Americans are crossing the border, and the Mexicans close the border to the Americans. I kid you not. Good movie, by the way. They try to stop us from going there, but it keeps going. By the mid-1850s, you have about 30,000 Americans living in Texas or Mexico or whatever you want to call it. So that's 10 times the number of Mexicans. And they also will try to reinforce the fact that slavery is illegal there. So in 1834, you get a general named Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, and he decides he's going to dissolve the Mexican Congress and declares himself dictator. Have you ever seen that episode of King of the Hill where Cotton had Santa Anna's leg? Yeah, okay. He had a wooden leg. So he takes over the government and declares himself dictator and takes the military north to take back Texas, essentially. So the Americans find out that they're on their way and throw together a little army, ragtag army. What do I mean by ragtag? Just whoever can show up. There's a movie, Fletch Lives. Have you ever seen that? It's got Chevy Chase in it. And there's like a Klan meeting or a Klan group trying to burn a cross on his lawn at his plantation. And it's like, we couldn't even find enough people to show up for the meeting. So, we just took anybody. So it's the same thing. So they're going to clash with Santa Anna's troops, and then they're going to start having problems with Texas. Now, on March 2nd, 1836, Texas will proclaim themselves independent from Mexico. And for a long time, Texas is its own country. It is not immediately part of the United States. It's its own country. They write a constitution that's similar to ours, but it prohibits the Texas Congress from interfering with slavery. And the South is drooling. Wouldn't they love to have that and be able to get away with it? Well, Texas can get away with it because they're not part of the United States, nor are they part of Mexico, so they think. Then you have the infamous Alamo. Santa Anna will attack the Texans at the old mission in San Antonio and kill all 187 defenders. Woohoo! Big old army against 187 people. Not a very fair fight. But it's war. These 187 defenders are going to wipe out 1,500 of his men. Not too bad. But we still lost there. So when you hear people say, remember the Alamo, remember we got our butts kicked. So then he will attack Goliad, and then had them surrender. Anyway, it was a big old mess. It's the Alamo. It wasn't good, and this ticked Americans off. So Sam Houston, who was a former governor of Tennessee, now you see the Tennessee-Texas connection here. He's the commander of the Texas forces. He's a Tennessean, so he likes to fight and drink. Because I know lots of people like that. And my very own family. So yeah. He's a very smart man. He's known as a stump speaker. What is that? If you don't have a soapbox, what do you use? A stump. He gets up on a stump, and here's how it is, people. If I had a stump, I could be up on one right now. He retreats from the attack when Santa Anna is pursuing him because his army is not trained too good. They're just kind of thrown together. So he needs time to train. So in late April, he goes with reinforcements, and they end up at the San Jacinto River, and they take the Mexican army by surprise. The attackers will ride through the camp while the men are asleep at their afternoon siesta. I like this concept. At 2:30, all I want to do is sleep. And I think that's why we're supposed to take a nap at 2:30. And as they ride through the camp, they shout, "Remember the Alamo." Now, this is supposed to be a battle cry for the Americans. But for the, did I say for the Mexicans or the Americans? Americans. So if the Mexicans are hearing this, they're thinking, oh, we could beat them again. That's not how it works. But that, they're like, remember the Alamo. I'm like, yeah, we whipped your butts there, but okay, whatever. So after 15 minutes of battle, Santa Anna is captured. So that's the end of that. He signs a treaty and will recognize that Texas is an independent country. He establishes the Rio Grande River as the southern border of Texas. And it is still the southern border of Texas. So the Congress tries to dissolve the agreement, and they will invade Texas a few more times. And by now, Texas has really kind of got their stuff together. So every time they try to beat them, they take a loss. Let's say that. So Sam Houston will become president of the Republic of Texas in 1836. Now, on your final, you will have some bonus questions. Now, interestingly enough, this would make a great bonus question. Who was the first president of the Republic of Texas? Now, while he enjoys being the president, he wants to become part of the United States. I don't know why. He'd been better off just staying out of it. Of course, Texas is like its own little country anyway. Back in Washington, Jackson is worried about bringing Texas into the Union because they're not going to want to come in as a free state. They're going to come in as a slave state. And this will stir up all that sectional trouble again. The balance of power. So he will fear Van Buren's chances of beating him in the next election. So on the last day he was in office, he extends an invitation, he recognizes Texas and opens diplomatic relations with them as if they're their own country. Van Buren does win, but he doesn't take any action to bring Texas into the Union. Because when he comes in 2 months after, there's a panic, and everything just kind of goes downhill. So Texas is on their own. Any questions so far? Comments? Anybody know anybody that lives in Texas?
I've been there.
My cousin Jeremy lived there for a while. He went to school out there. I wanted to go to Texas Tech, but it's too expensive. All right, so in 1841 and 1842, you have some people that are brave enough or desperate enough to venture west because of manifest destiny. So you have a few hundred people going. In 1830 or 1843, you have 800 that will follow using what becomes the overland trail to Oregon. After 1843, people started going by the thousands. Now, there's going to be a couple of things that are going to spur them on, especially in about 6 years. You have a specific family migration pattern. I would know these. They're small families. They're couples that have recently married and cannot find land anywhere else. They're adults that range between the ages of 20 and 50. And the problem is that to migrate with just a family of 4, you need $600 to fund your trip. If you can't come up with $600, you're not going west. You know, these are up on D2L. You can just print them off. I did that for a reason. I'm just saying. On the Overland Trail, the women are going to have a really hard time with things. Where am I? Oh, here I am. Okay. Sorry about that. So, of course, women have to go with their husbands. It's not like they can go out there and send a plane ticket back home so they can fly out. So the women have to go. So the journey is going to be particularly hard on the women. Number one, if you're pregnant when you leave, chances are you're going to give birth on the trail. Giving birth is dangerous enough in your house, much less in a wagon, surrounded by wild animals and Indians and everything. It disrupts their lives. Under the way that things were, women ran the house. That was their domain. On the trail, they have no house, so they lose their domain. They still have to do the same tasks. They have to cook, they have to clean, they have to birth the children, they have to take care of the children, they have to make clothes for the children, and all that good stuff. When they first start out, the men will say, okay, you do the wife thing, and I'll do the rest. I'll drive the wagon, I'll take care of the animals. At night, I'll stand guard so you don't wake up with a bald spot in the morning. And we won't have to do any of the heavy labor, just the cooking and the cleaning and stuff like that. So women are like, okay, if that's all I have to do, which they should have known. No. But as they get on the trail, they find out that not only do they have to do all this stuff, but they're going to eventually find themselves repairing wagons, building bridges, standing guard Most of these women can shoot anyway. Driving wagons, chopping firewood, hunting, especially if your husband died en route and you don't have sons to take care of you. Chances are there's another single guy on the trip and you would just marry out of convenience. And then on your way you find out you're going to have another kid. So yeah. They try to maintain a home. A wagon does not a home make. So a lot of things are going to happen with women because they try to maintain this guise of home. They're going to experience a sense of loss. If you don't have a basically sturdy house to go into and shut your door at night, are you going to be comfortable? No, you're going to have that loss of security. They don't like the fact that the wagon trains will travel on Sundays. Women were in control of the moral authority or the religion in the family. So if you're traveling, you can't very well have devotions because you're all walking at a different pace. They don't like the fact that they don't get to spend a lot of time with other women. They're too busy, even in the wagon trains. And of course, if you're out on the plains in the middle of nowhere and there are no civilizations around, you're not going to have that comfort of a civilization. Even though with civilization it wasn't that civilized, I guess. Makes sense. Now, William Henry Harrison becomes president in 1836, and I told you wrong before, it was William Henry Harrison. He wins. Now, he does something silly. On a rainy day, he goes out to buy groceries without a hat, without a coat, without his gloves, catches pneumonia, and dies 1 month to the day after he's inaugurated. So when he gets finished, when they bury him, John Tyler becomes president. Now, on the outside, he looks courteous and well-mannered and warm and friendly and approachable, but it's a facade. I love that word. It's a good word. He will use his veto power to knock down any bill that the Whig Party will try to propose. Who are the Whigs trying to help? The common people, right. He vetoes 2 bills to establish a new bank, and Andrew Jackson just loved that, by the way. He's like, woohoo, you go, John Tyler. Get rid of that bank. He's politically rigid. That means he doesn't care who's trying to kiss his feet. Here's how it is, and this is the way it's supposed to stay. His own party doesn't even put him up for re-election in the next election. So he has to go in search of another party. So he tries to find an issue, and that issue will be the annexation of Texas. In 1844, you have another election. Wait a minute. 1844, you have another election. Henry Clay is going to run for the Whig Party, and Martin Van Buren is going to run once again with the Democrats. Neither one will approach the slavery issue, and this is not the first time that people will try to avoid this at all costs. They both oppose bringing Texas into the Union because they think, number one, it's going to threaten the Union because of the spread of what? Slavery. And they think that if we try to annex Texas as a state, then it's going to get Mexico's dander up, and they're going to come up here and start shooting at us. And we really don't want another war right now. We got enough trouble. Now, the Democrats are so afraid of Van Buren that they're going to nominate James K. Polk of Tennessee. He's pro-Texas, and he likes the expansion platform, which means expanding slavery to the West. He wins, and this guy wouldn't have been a whole lot of fun at a party. He has no sense of humor. He's very calculating. What does that mean? we were talking before class of some issues you're having. And you were,
Principal?
yes, thinking about how you can get somebody back. That's what that means. And deceitful. He didn't always tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help him all, as the Rugrats would say. He's a very determined man. He wants to expand all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And he wasn't the first one. So he goes to Congress and says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pressure the British into giving us their half of Oregon. The Americans will outnumber the British, but we don't want to go to war with Britain yet again. So here's what's going to happen. The British will offer a deal. They will divide the Oregon Territory at the 49th parallel. And whatever is below the 49th parallel is ours. What's above is theirs. Worked out pretty good. Polk agrees to this because we get access to the Puget Sound. And that was a good thing. Then we have the Mexican War. And in 1845, Congress will admit Texas to the Union as a slave state. The North does not like this, but they'll just have to deal with it. So Mexico will argue that Texas cannot become a state because they weren't independent from Mexico. And they said that the Rio Grande River is not the southern boundary, but the Nuecio River is the boundary, which cut Texas pretty much, gave most of Texas back to them. So Polk will offer to buy New Mexico and California, but they refuse. Now, why would they turn down money? That's stupid. I mean, something that we already learned anyway, and they didn't need it. So just, here, make some money. But anyway, so Polk sends General Zachary Taylor to the Rio Grande to encourage them to accept the deal to buy the land. So on April 25th, Taylor and his men will clash with the Mexican forces. Of course, this will lead to a declaration of war against Mexico. And of course, Mexico gets the blame. In reality, it was our soldiers that provoked the Mexicans. They were not sure who it was that fired the first shot, but it was one of the American soldiers that shot first. So that's what started it all. Somebody say something? Oh, I thought I heard somebody say something. So, Taylor sends, Taylor. He sends, Polk sends a bill to Congress asking for volunteers and money to raise troops. There are several really interesting battles that take place in this. This war is called Mr. Polk's War. The Whigs did not want to go to war with Mexico to gain property. In June 1846, you have something called the Bear Flag Revolt. What does the state of California's flag have on it?
Bear.
A bear. Interesting, huh? They have a Bear Flag Revolt, and they declare that California is independent from Mexico. And American forces will roundly defeat the Mexican forces in California. So by January of 1847, 6 months later, California was all American. In the South, Taylor moved through Texas and places like that, and there's won several important battles. The Battle of Monterey, these were some of them. Buena Vista, Veracruz, Cerro Gordo. In February 2nd, 1848, you have the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that ends the Mexican-American War. And the war cost $97 million which is a lot of money, and we lose 13,000 Americans. And not just to battle, the majority of them will die due to disease. The higher cost of this war is that slavery as an issue will be thrust into the limelight of the political ring. And this will threaten to upset the balance of power between the North and the South, because now there is one more slave state than free state. So it's going to offset that balance. Can you see why that would be a problem? You already have a tentative peace anyway. I mean, they're just kind of dealing with each other. Now, the slavery issue is going to be around until, the South is defeated in the Civil War. So in 1846 in August, you're going to have the tension between the North and the South finally give way. And for some reason, Polk wants $2 million. Can't really figure that out, but he wants $2 million for something. And I'll look it up and see what it was. I just forget right now. On August the 8th, a guy named David Wilmot opposes an amendment that abolishes slavery in the Mexican territory. So he is pro-slavery. And it becomes known as the Wilmot Proviso. The amendment will go through the House a couple times, but the Senate always kicks it back. And Wilmot wants to keep all black people out of the territories, but it's not because he's against slavery. Basically, his proviso is designed to keep slavery where it already was, to keep it from expanding. Under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, you have New Mexico and Upper California being acquired, and even after we beat them and got it anyway, we gave them $18 million. It's government money. It's not coming out of taxpayers' pockets or anything like that. So now the U.S. had control of the West. Just in time, because something interesting is getting ready to happen. In January of 1848, this guy named James Marshall is building a sawmill. Now, how in the world can we go from building a sawmill to the gold rush? Well, I'm getting ready to tell you. He looks down just randomly and sees these little shiny things in the water. And it turns out it's gold. So, more and more people start seeing these little specks of stuff in the river. And they're like, this would be pretty cool. So by the spring of 1849, you have the Overland Trail packed with what are called 49ers. There's a football team. Which city do they belong to? San Francisco, right. Between 1848 and 49, the population of California goes from 14,000 to 100,000. In 1860, it's 300,000. Mining camps will pop up everywhere, and the next day they'll be gone. Just like that. 80% of the prospectors are Americans or free blacks. 20% come from other countries. Mexico, Australia. Interesting, huh? Australia. Hawaii, China, France, England, and Ireland. Most of them are unmarried men in their 20s and 30s. They were always moving, working hard. They had cash to spend at area entertaining places where they could get a beverage and a companion for the night. So all of this is going to lead to a very wild society, i.e. the Wild West. So miners had a kind of behavior that would not be behooving to them during this time. They like to gamble. You have lots of money, you're going to want to play poker. You like to swear. If you're losing, you're going to say a swear word. You like to have something to drink because you get tired of drinking that old water, so you got to have, a warm brewski or a couple shots of something. They love to fight because once you start drinking and losing at gambling, you're going to have to do something to let out all that anger. And if you're not going to fight, then you're going to associate with a woman of questionable reputation. Do you get my drift? On the other side of the coin, you have a 5% that is women and children. Now, these women and children will benefit from what the minors are doing, but not in a bad way. They're good girls, okay? They pay these women to do their cooking, to do their sewing, to do their washing, and these women will run boarding houses or hotels, things like that. They always had men that wanted to take them to the theater or, whatever's going on. You ever see that episode of Ghost Hunters where they did the, what was it, that club?
Yeah.
Yeah, out in Tucson?
Yeah.
Or was it Tucson? Or
It was an old hotel. I think it was Tucson.
no, it was a club.
I thought it was a hotel.
They did a hotel too, but they did like I can't think of the name of it, but it was like a theater and a brothel and a bar and stuff like that. I can't think of the name of it. Birdcage or something. Not birdcage. Anyway, it was a theater. They always had men that wanted to take them out. Some men wanted a decent woman and not just somebody that, worked in a saloon. The most common female group, of course, would be prostitutes. You had a set of laws, so to speak, in the camps, and these were the regulations that were adopted by the miners. And if somebody was caught jumping someone's claim, what's that mean?
Stealing it.
Stealing stuff out of what was theirs. They would elect a jury, but from all the miners, and then have a case, and whether or not the guy's guilty. Anyway, these eventually will turn into lynch mobs, and it's not always this way. 90 times out of 100, it's going to be a fair trial or whatever, but eventually it's going to turn into lynch law. Of course, if you overmine something, there's a higher supply of it, and the price is going down. In 1848, you could earn $20 a day. That was a lot of money. By 1852, you might earn $6 a day. It's like overproducing tobacco. It sends the prices down. One more slide and we'll stop for the day. There are environmental damage that goes along with mining. I would know these. Remember what I said the first day? I'm all about the environment. They would leave dig sites open, and you could fall into them and get hurt. Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe helped fill in some of these things that were still there from the 1840s. The piles of debris, you ever watch anybody do gold mining, pan gold, stuff like that? The debris would get into the rivers and the streams and choke them up, essentially. Farmland would flood. The dams led to destruction of forests and for firewood, for lumber, things like that. So you're losing trees, and they're building dams and everything. And then when the spring rains come, all that exposed land will wash away the topsoil. So we will stop there.